ready to go live. We are. Hey, hope this works. Hope people can hear me. At least I'm officially live. I'm just gonna wait the next 40 seconds to start the actual PowerShell content. Who's excited? Let me know in the comments if you're excited about PowerShell. I'm excited. All right, cool. It is now 7 p.m. officially, so we're ready to start rocking. All right, guys. So welcome to the stream. I'm so excited you guys are here. I can't see how many of you are here, so I'm assuming you're all here. Yeah, so this stream is about PowerShell today. I'm going to be giving you some basics about PowerShell, and then we're going to go into maybe Azure. I'm really hoping to get over the basics very fast, so this way we can go into Azure and have some fun with the cloud. One thing I'm going to preface all of this with is whatever I teach, whatever I say, how we can do things in PowerShell, the odds are there are like 5 other different ways of doing it. So please don't don't be upset if what I teach is there's an other way of doing it. If people tell you, oh, I don't do it this way. There's so many different ways to do so many different things in PowerShell. As I was writing the content for this, I kept trying to add more things. It was very small at first. Then it's like, oh, well, I need to go into this. I need to go into that. Hey, Timur. I hope I didn't butcher your name. So yeah, so that's the thing about PowerShell. There's a lot of different ways to do the same thing. There's a lot of prerequisite. There's like, it's very hard to find a good way to teach PowerShell that doesn't, because you can't just teach everything at once. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so I added a repo if you want to follow along. Yep, I want it this way. All right, so I added a repo in the description for the YouTube stream. If you're on the LinkedIn stream, I don't know how this works, but I think there's a comment with the link to the repo. Or if you're on my LinkedIn account, you can see the repo. I made a post. And that's basically what I'm showing you right here. I try to write this content ahead of time. And then the lessons are here. I'm going to go over the lessons. And then I'm going to try and do some examples in the console because it's more fun than just staring at me speaking. So let's get going. All right, so I'm sorry if I'm reiterating this. There are different ways of doing the same thing in PowerShell, so don't be upset if one of the ways you do things is not there. Go learn more things on your own, and it will be good. You'll find it. All right, so here are a few things that I think are prerequisite that you should have before we get started. I'm not going to go over them, but there's a link on how to install PowerShell, how to install VS Code, because if you are on a Windows machine, you probably are using PowerShell ISC, which is now deprecated. And so they would really like you to go to VS Code. Of course, PowerShell ISC still works on a Windows machine, but yeah. And then there's the PowerShell extension in VS Code that allows you to do formatting, that allows you to do things like update, like autocomplete for modules and cmdlets and things like that, and format your code. So those 3 are prerequisite that I think you should really have if you're going to do anything. Of course, you should have PowerShell. And this one is the PowerShell official documentation. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. It's all the documentation for PowerShell. The other thing that I think you should have is the about topics. So the about topics are great for different special things like arithmetic operators, arrays. There's a lot more detailed things than what I went into when I wrote this lesson. The goal is obviously to have something lightweight for this lesson, and if you want more, go there, go into those about topics, go into that documentation, and learn more on your own. I hope that this is not enough for you and that you will want more. So let's start with the commandlets. All right, so the commandlets are really the basic. This is annoying. Commandlets are really the basic thing that you would do in PowerShell. They're commands, basically. They're called commandlets because they're small commands. And they have a very specific structure that is verb-noun. So if you click here, you will see there's a list of approved verbs that do different things. And the great thing about that is then when you create something that follows this official documentation, you have a common framework to understand what things are doing, right? So there's, let's say, get. We all in agreement that get will retrieve something, and the opposite is set, and that will set something, or enter, or exit, or copy, or log, move, new, whatever. There's this common framework of vocabulary that really helps us understand what the commands are doing without actually needing to go into the documentation. I can't tell you how often knowing those verbs has been extremely helpful, and I didn't have to go to the documentation to understand what the command was doing. It's learn them, or at least some basic one that I'm going to go over. So, for example, new, which is the one to create a new resource, a new object, get, to get a value. One thing about get is it will not, in theory, there has been exceptions to that, but in theory, a get verb will not modify anything. It will just retrieve a value without doing any modification to any object at all. Set is the opposite of get. It will make modification. It will make a modification for sure. Remove. Write is used a lot for the outputs. So that's some basic verbs you should know. Those will be there a lot. And yeah, so there's also parameters for commandlets, and there's also, which are like options for the commandlet that allows you to specify what you want it to do. And then you have parameter sets. And so parameter sets are different configuration of the same thing. So they are things that go together. So for example, if I want to, this is not something that getChildAtom does that you see here, but let's say getChildAtom was able to get data on the file system and get data on the network, for example, get data on a remote machine where you give it the IP. So instead of having a path here, the different parameter set would have IP or computer name or something like that. And here I actually send you to invoke command, and you can see invoke command has a ton of different parameter set that are just very specific use cases, right? And this highlighted thing in blue really helps you differentiate, like, I have this information, right, when I want to run this command, and this is the parameter set I need to use. So very, very practical, and very important to know. So when you read documentation, that's what parameter set. So for example, if there's container ID here, right, you have to use this set. You can't just use this set right here because there's no, or this set, because container ID is not in here, right? So you have to use the set. All right. And what else? And that's it for commandlets. We're pretty good. I hope you don't have any questions, and we're going to run some commandlets and have fun. The most basic one that I can think of all the time is get date, right? So we're running it on Friday, July 9th at 7:09 p.m., right? And then we can do get date, and we do format, right? And then we can format our dates to have the format we want. And I just did this a couple of minutes ago, so hopefully, yeah, there you go. So 907 or 97 if we want it. See, we can modify, we can influence how commandlet interacts, and by using those parameters, we can also do test net connection. I think that's it. Give her a name 127.0.0.1. Yeah, let me test connection. And none of it, there you go. So that's a loopback IP address. So you can see that's the equivalent of ping for PowerShell, which is great to know, very useful to know. Of course, ping 127.0.0.1 works. I mean, that's the default ping. This one is the Mac OS one, but so yeah. And we can do, there's different counts, I think. And we can do, I don't know, there's 4, so we'll do 5, right? There you go. So it ran 5. So that's the basics of commandlet. I hope you guys don't have any questions. And let's get going to the next thing. All right, so the next thing is variables, right? Pretty sure that's variables. Yeah, variables. Those are useful. Hold on here. Come on. All right, variables are useful because they allow you to store data, so you don't have to use it over and over and over again. So let's do this. Let's do a new file, and we'll say variables PS1. And all this will be uploaded to, all the modification I make to this will be uploaded at the end of this, so you will have it on your own. So let's say date equals get date, right? We can store that date, and let's say we want to see if, and of course I'm gonna go into things that you don't know, if date is greater than, I don't know, let's say if it's a get date is greater than date dot add seconds 60, right? So we can run this. We say false. So we have done this, it's less than 60 seconds. Now if we do start sleep to seconds, let's say 20, and we'll add 10, right? We'll even do faster, we'll do 10 and we'll add 5. This is gonna pause. So it's gonna wait 10 seconds. That's the commandlet to pause something, the code, and then it will say true, yeah, because we waited 10 seconds, and when we have our original date, we added 5 seconds to it, and that's good, because if we had to use get date and we had to use the commandlet all the time, we would run into a bit of a difficulty, because how do we do this, right? So that's important to know, having variables. Let's say if we want to get the processes running, right? Processes, go get process. Actually, we're going to comment this out so we can run this. So now we got, so this is stored. in a variable. Well, I'm sorry, variables are $sign and a name. So once we have that, right, this is stored in memory. Now we can do processes. Sorry. Let's look at what we have. Oh, all right. So I don't know what those are, but who cares? And we can filter, for example. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't cover pipes. Pipes are going to come much later, but where object. Sorry. That name is equal to this. Hopefully, if we run this, this will give us just those exactly. But now, let's say I want Wi-Fi agent, right? I want to keep that. I want to see those, but then at the same time, I also want to see Wi-Fi agent. Right? It's great because I can reuse it at this point in time. I can also do another start sleep. Right, seconds 10. So the processes in this, when they were gotten, I'm probably going to change in 10 seconds. Processes get created and destroyed all the time. So storing it in a variable is very useful, because now that we have those processes stored, we could do something where we would, for example, compare which processes got destroyed, which processes are still running, and all that stuff. So that's why variables are very useful. So I'm not going to spend too much time because we want to move on. It's already like 15 minutes past, so let's get going. All right. Next thing is going to be strings. All right. So making strings is very important, because strings allow you to give somebody output, right? They allow you to give someone data. And so being able to build strings is a very important for any programming, because we're going to need to build strings. And I have examples here. So let's say the most basic thing is the literal string, right? Ooh, this is cute, right? And then we built a string, and this is just the data. This data is not going to change unless you do like something to it, but this data is always the same. So that's a single quote string. So in PowerShell, if you have a single quote string, whatever is in there is going to be read exactly like it is. There's no formatting, there's no nothing. Single quote, nothing special happens. But now if we get a double quote, right? Let's give this, right? Like this example. Right. This is a test string, right? It still did the A. This is A string. Wait, oh, because I did double quote. Never mind. Never mind. So I did double quote. So when you have a double quote, then A, that variable A gets replaced. That's backtick N. Oh, Mark, you didn't miss much. We just went through commandlets and variables, and now we're at strings. So there's the repo in the link for the YouTube stream, and so you can follow along if you want. And this is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to see it later. So see, now this is great because let's change A, right? A equals, say, super awesome, right? And now let's build a test string again, and let's run it. And see, now our string says this is a super awesome string. So this is great with the double quote variables. For a double quote string is you can put variables in there. So you don't have to do much work to build a string. There's here you can build a string using the plus like this, right? Which is a little bit annoying because you have to open the quote, you have to close the quote, then you have to open the next quote, open the next variable, right? Like this one. right? So, I mean, for one thing, it's fine. But then the more things you have to add to the string, the longer it gets and the harder it gets to read. So that's why when you use the double quote, it's awesome. So let's look at this example right here. And so I'm gonna cover arrays in like right after this. So this is an array. But see, we created our string like this with a double quote, and everything is in there is replaced. So instead of having something where it's like right index and then close quote, then plus I, then plus the rest of the string, plus this, plus that. Double quote makes it your life a lot easier. And you can see here, very nice way of doing it. And you've probably noticed this $ open parentheses. Now, what this means is that whatever is in that $ open parentheses is going to be interpreted. So it's going to run first, then PowerShell is going to add it to the string, and then it's going to return the string. So if we do something like this here, right? Actually, I don't need to redo the array here. So as you can see here, we have get date. We have our commandlet that returns a date. So now this is a dumb example. It doesn't really, there's no real practical use for it. But you can see it evaluates the date. And if we do our little start sleep like I did previously, right? Start sleep, seconds 1, we'll do 1 second, right? So you can see that number is now changing. So every time it gets evaluated, put in the string, and then the string gets returned. So that's very practical if you don't really need a variable for something like this. I love this little thing right here, the open quote, the bracket get dates. This is my go-to thing when I write logs and things like that. I always use that because it's very practical to get like an idea of where you stand, what the time is, and yeah, it's awesome. I like it. I'm weird, but yeah. Okay. String done. All right. Hopefully, we'll get through all this quickly. Next thing is going to be arrays. Now, I want arrays here. Keep doing that. All right. Arrays. So arrays, you can think of them as a list of items, even though technically computer science-wise, it is not a list. But just think about it as a grocery list, right? Where you write your items one at a time, right? So when you do, of course, our little get process, then processes is a list, right? It's a list of processes that are running on my machine. There's a few. I have multiple screens with a lot of things open, so yeah, it's a mess. The one thing you can do is you can create little arrays like this. So if you have numbers, you can very simply, oh, sorry. You can very simply just do your array, build your array. Oh, thank you. I think it's just the default black theme from VS Code. So actually, can I show the comment so it makes sense what I'm doing? All right, so when you do an array like this, and by the way, people, Rashab is here, and right after this, he has a stream to learn C#. So I recommend you learn C# too, because you can use C# in PowerShell. So make sure to check out his channel. So here you can build a little array, and you can also build a little array with only one item by just putting a comma at the beginning. So that's a little array. Now you can use the spread operator, the range operator, right? When you can build numbers 5 through 8. So those are very basic. You probably won't use them a lot, but you'll see where that's going to come in handy later. But the one you would probably want to use really is this one, the at open parentheses, close parentheses. That's how you create an empty array in the most basic way. And then you can also add items into your array. So this is an array with only one string that says hello world, and then you have an array with 3 items, like this. The good thing about this is you can also do, see if it lets me. You can also split it over multiple lines. Actually, the comma should probably come at the end of the line, which is great for readability, and works exactly the same. So array type, most arrays, the default is a system.object, right? So if we get my array, it's just, oh, system.array, never mind. But you can also typecast it. So you can force it to be an int array, right? So now if we do this, and get type, oops, let's not forget this. Oh, see, oh, there we go. Right. It is an array, right? That's what that bracket means. And the type is object. And here the type is int32. So it's a 32-bit integer. Yeah. And then now let's access the array. I'm sorry, this is taking a long time. So you can access a range. You can just access simply by putting it in a bracket. Let's clear this, right? Bracket, and then you get the index. It's a 0. It starts types array over. Can we have multiple types arrays or object? Yes, you can have anything in an array, and I think I actually have an example of this. But you could, it will default at system.object, but let's say array equals at, right, so string number, we even put a null in there, and then let's put a hash table, test equals test, right? And yeah, the array is like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. So that's the great thing with PowerShell. It's like there's one rule, there's no rule. So very, very good question, Rashab. So you can put multiple types in an array. Of course, the array will then be a system.object array. But yeah. One thing you can do that's cool with PowerShell is this, right? You can get multiple indexes at once. So here we got 9 through 14, which is very valuable if you know I want from this point to this point, and you don't have to like basically build a new array. So very valuable. And then we get to count, which is the equivalent of length in all our other languages, and it gives you how many items are in the array. If you get a this one, right, array that count has 4 items, even though there's like nulls or stupid stuff in there, it still counts as an item. Done with array. Awesome, congrats everyone. We made it through. Hash tables. So the next one is hash tables. Hash tables are something that are pretty cool and sometimes overused, at least from what I can tell. A hash table is a way to, it's like an array, except of having indexes where it's like item number 1, item number 2, item number 3. You have a key. So you can say, and I have examples here. This is nested hash table, right? It's very cute that it does that, but at the same time, the longer the code, the crazier it is. So see here, you can say, this is the same notation as an array with like the bracket notation, but here I put Caroline, and then also address Twitter, right? So that's my Twitter handle. And that's awesome if you have data that's like this, you can find things quickly. And the thing about a hash table compared to an array to find a value is that, sorry for getting computer science on you, is that it's constant time. So no matter where that, you can have a hash table with billions and billions of objects, but since there's only one key, the way the hash table works is it will instantly returns that item, right? Whereas if you had to do this with an array, unless you know exactly the index, in which case if you know the index, you get constant time too, you will have to search through the whole list of items in basically your grocery list, right? And to find it. So imagine an array is your grocery list where you read it one item at a time. And your hash table is a grocery list where you have a dictionary where each item has its own page, and you know exactly which, you just look for the name, right? You know where the name is and you find it instantaneously. It's not really the best analogy. It's also, I think, C# refers to a hash table as a dictionary, which is very appropriate because there's one key and one value. So the way you create a hash table is you have this basic at and then open close curly bracket, right? So the array is open close parentheses, the hash table is curly brackets. And then you can add your keys with the little method called add. So if we do this, ages, so I'm obviously 25 years old. So now if we can also add more things, right? We don't have to store them in variables, right? So now if we get my real age, right? It says 25 years old, of course. I've done a few 25 years old birthdays, but it's 25 still. See, and constant time, no matter what I address, right? And I can also add here, as you can see here in this one, you can also add just numbers. The keys also, just like the array, they don't have a specific type. They can be any object. So here, a number is perfectly acceptable, right? And it can even return, here it returns a string, right? There's no types. But there's only one key. So now if you want to add another 25, it's not going to be happy because the key 25 is always already there. Now, if you want to add a 25, then you're just going to have to modify the value at 25. Now, if we get it back, or into, right? So you have to modify it. If the key already exists, you will get an issue. So that's the annoying thing about a hash table is you can't just add any key however you want. I have an example later where we add things much later in functions where we add things to a hash table, and you'll see how we handle this case. And the way you handle this case, actually, I'm just going to show it right now, is you check if the key exists. And if the key exists, you update the value. If the key doesn't exist, you create the value, right? So another thing you can do, and that's a little known secret of, I'll let you in the secret of PowerShell, is you can actually return more than one value, and that will give you an array. And so you can add multiple keys. You can ask for multiple keys at once, and it will give you an array with all the keys, which is pretty awesome. And if you're wondering what all the keys are, right, you can just get the keys. Right, there's a key. You do dot keys, and you get all the keys. You can also do dot values, right? I might be, no. Dot values with an S. You can get all the values. So that's pretty awesome. You can test if a key does not exist if a key exists to see if its value is null. right? So this key true test is not there, but let me break that for you. Here's the code. Here's the code that will break that way of doing things. Oh, can you just oh, I messed up here. But now that we've added, so basically if we add a key that has that name and we said the value is null, seeing it, it's gonna, the key is there, right? Key is there. But if we go and do this test, it's gonna return true. So that's why you say you use contains key. You could use the other one if you're very sure of your code that it will not add a null item, but otherwise contains key. And we're done with hash tables. Whew. All right, let's do some loops now. Loops. All right, we're almost done with the boring stuff, I promise you. Then we'll go to Azure. All right, so there's a few types of loops, and really that's knowledge that you can use anywhere. Like almost all programming languages, I don't know if C++, actually the new C++ has for it. So all the programming languages have these loops. So if you learn this, you'll be all set for programming in terms of knowing loops. And the syntax tends to be more or less the same, not always, but it tends to be the same. Let's clear this. The most basic loop is the for each loop, right? In PowerShell, at least. That's the loop that basically you give it a list of items, so on an array, and you tell it for each item in the list, to extract that item here, we set it item, and then we do something with the item inside the loop. Here we're writing to the host, but you can do anything else you want. So very simple. While loop is great, except when you do things like this, where it will run forever. So while loops are awesome, except they can't run forever, right? So you need to make sure you update your condition properly and think it through, read the code properly to make sure that it will stop at some point. Otherwise, you might just be like, hey, why is this not completing? Well, because you didn't tell it to, right? So here, if we do this, and now we get our I equals 10. See, so it updated, it ran, and you didn't see it run. Ow. Sorry. You can also add the right host. What did I do? Did I miss something? Why is this not writing? Look, trust me. Oh, because I 0. Never mind. I equals 0. There we go. So it's running. You can also do things like this for waiting, right? So for example, if you do this, this will wait until the hour of like the clock is 6. So that's what I use to pause my programs if I have to start things at a specific time. I run this program, I put this right at the beginning. Of course, I put a start sleep to make it less CPU intensive. But you do this, and as soon as it turns 6, boom, everything gets triggered. It exits this loop, and everything else below it runs. Very practical code. Do while. Now, if you look at this code right here, while. So this is pseudocode, so it doesn't do anything. But let's say you get your orders, and then while you don't have orders, type of thing, you want to refresh your list of orders, right? So the way you would do it with a while loop is you basically do get your orders first, then evaluate your while loop, and in your while loop, you update your condition to get your orders. Now, if you do a do while loop, what happens is the while gets evaluated at the end of the loop. So the first thing it does is you get the order, right? and then it evaluates if it needs to go a second time. So that makes the code a lot simpler, especially if you have like big code right here. So the one thing you can guarantee with the do while loop is that it will always run at least once. You can't guarantee that with a while loop, or well, actually only with a while. You can't guarantee that it will run once, but you can guarantee that this one, the do while loop, will run at least once. Then there's the for loop. A for loop is rather basic and yet very complicated. So the for loop, the most common way of doing a for loop is like this. You start with an index I equals 0, then you run for less than a certain amount of times, and then you increment your I every time, right? So that's the basic for loop, right? Usually go over items of an array. The one thing you can do is, if you look here, the format is you initialize a value, right? Have fun, Rishab. You initialize your value, then you evaluate your condition, and then you update your condition. So you could basically do things like this, right? Our loop that waits here, our this loop, you can make it with a for loop right here. Right? Basically, every hour, you start with the date, right? You get the date, then you get the hour, and as long as the hour is not equal to 6, you update your condition to date equals get date. Pretty neat. They don't teach you that in school. Actually, I don't know what they teach you in school. I didn't really take programming classes. Cool. Next, let's go to conditionals. Conditionals are a way to react to inputs, to variables, to changes in your code. And that's your if, then, else statement, right? So if the most basic is an if, right? So if the condition is met, so this has to evaluate to true. It has to be true. This condition has to be true. And if it's false, and you wanted that in case of false, it's true, you need to say not. You need to negate your condition. So that's a Boolean operation type of thing. So for example, here we have a little random number. This is very cute, but very annoying. Okay, well, it ran because if you ran it at one go, it wouldn't write the if afterwards. But see, so basically based on the random number, it will go and do something different. So it will be either 1 or 2. And if you have a 2, it will give you, I got a 2. If you got a 1, it says I got a 1. Great. Now, I don't want to do if I got a 1, if I got a 2, right? I can just say if I have a 2. So that's where the else statement comes in, right? Because I know if I don't have a 2, I have a 1, right? Fairly straightforward, right? Got a 2 again. I don't know how I get this, 50% chance. So great, right? But now, what if I wanted to do more than just 1 and 2, right? So that's where you have else if. So if this first condition is not true, then let's evaluate the second one. And if that's not true, let's evaluate the third one, and so on and so forth. And if none of them are true, we can just go straight to our else. Actually, you don't even need to have that else, I think. And then we'll go to that else. So let's do something, a little roll where if I have a 10-sided dice, so numbers from 1 to 10, and I roll it 10 times, and if I get a 2, I get 10 points. If I get an even number, I get 5 points. If I get a 3, I get 3 points. And if I get anything else, I got 1 point, right? And these are my rolls. So if you want to do that this at home, if You can pause. I think you can also pause the live stream and then get back to it later. You can pause and try to code this yourself with the code, with the loop and all that stuff. So here's the solution. I'll give you the solution, right? Because I don't want to do this all night. This is super cute. I like it a lot. Somebody's controlling my computer. And so we have our roles, right? 1 through 10. The total is 0. And for each, see, we're using each. So roles, this is our values, 1 through 10, right? And then we do, if it's equal to 3, then we add 3. If it's even, we add 5. If it's 2, we add 10. But is this correct? Aha. Well, let's go through it. What if we have 1? All right, 1, this is not 3, this is not even, this is not 2, this is 1, right? Let's go to 2. Is this equal to 3? No. Is this even? Yes. All right, so we add 5. And where's our evaluation of 2? So see, order does matter. I actually have the real answer here, and the total is 37 and not 32. Haha. Much better, because now we have the proper evaluation, right? 2, 3, even, everything else, right? Because 2 is even, so 2 has to come before the even. And we can also do something with odds, and then odds will have to go either where the even is, but at least after 3. Okay. Now let's do something completely random, where we have, if you roll a 1, you get 10 points. If you roll 2, you get 10 points. If you roll 3, you get 1 point. I use a random number generator to do that. And here, let's assume, think about how you would do it with else if. Would that be crazy? You would have like at least 3 lines. So then what is it? 3 times 30 lines. That's 30 lines for all of this. So that's not a good solution. And that's why we have the switch operator statement, switch statement, right? So basically what happens with a switch, you give it a value here, and then it's going to evaluate it, right? It's going to evaluate it. So now we have 10 lines instead of, well, 10 plus 3, so 13 lines instead of 30. And that's very practical, because it's going to go and then 1, and we add 10. And go through the whole thing. So now if we look at that switch, right? And by the way, what I'm typing here every time I clear the console is CLS. It's an alias. And in the lesson, I do say that I'm not going to cover alias because they're not good practice, but very useful for quick and dirty type of thing that is not production. So there you go. This evaluated each row. We went through the row. We did the points. And we have a total that's 64. Awesome. Tap yourself on the back for making it through. Conditionals. And now, last item, functions. All right, functions will save your life. Probably not literally, but it definitely will be very useful. So a function is a way to write code, and functions are everywhere. Every single programming language will have functions. A function is a way to wrap a piece of code into one statement, right? Basically. So if we have a basic function, let's say we want to get a random number between 1 and 100. Of course, we can type here, get random minimum 1, maximum 101, right? And we get our random number. But I don't want to type minimum 1, maximum 101 all the time. That's very annoying, right? So that's why I wrap it in there. And now imagine if I have more than just those 2 lines of code, that 1 line of code, like it becomes very useful and much more legible. Because I could also say something more descriptive here in our noun that would help us understand why we're doing this. So here 90, right? Perfect. Now let's go back to our dice example here. Those are our points, right? That was our code so you can remember. Now, what if we got this score thing in a function, right? We're going to give this scoring function. I'm going to create this function to score thing. And here you can see this param, which is a parameter. That's when I define my own parameter for a function. And I say it's going to be an array of numbers and it's going to be named roles, right? So when I use it, it's going to be named dash roles. Okay. And now let's say I have this function saved somewhere. I can even like ignore it, right? Boom. It's saved. It's in memory right there. That's how PowerShell does it. It's in memory. You don't need to worry about it. But look at this. Now this is my code. This is the code. Right? This is much more legible. Do you care about how the scoring is done? Let me rephrase that. We don't care to see how the scoring is done in our code. We assume that everything is correct, and if you have a problem, you go see your code for the function and validate that this is correct. But when you read this code, when you have here's my roles and here's the score, that's it. I get it. I get what this is doing. This is rolling numbers 1 through 10, and this is scoring those numbers. Right. That simplifies things a lot. But now we can also make it even more complicated, and we can add a get roles, right? We don't want 1 through 10. That's not realistic. So we're going to make our function to roll for us. It's going to generate random numbers, and we're going to get our roles, right? So let's see. We can run it. Random numbers, random list of numbers that are our roles, right? And now we can do something cool where we can collect statistics on how those scores are, which one is the more prevalent score that you can get. Just like if you do like the 6-sided dice, and the most likely outcome is a 7 type of thing, we could do that, right? So here, I'm going to run it because it's going to take a while. It's going to give us big numbers. So here we create our hash table, right? Then from 1 to 100,000 runs, right? We're going to create roles, random roles. Then we're going to score them. And then we're going to see if our hash table contains a score, the score we're looking at, then we're going to add a score of 0. And the reason why we're adding a score of 0 is because then we can count that we have one more person, whether or not the key is there. And then we're just going to return our scores, which is awesome because if you look at this, we covered everything but strings. Everything we saw in that one example. So your homework, and I'm not going to go do that because I'd like to move on to Azure and more fun things, is add the string. Add the string that shows a score that comes out the most often. So you probably would use scores.keys and maybe a for loop or for each loop, and maybe compare the values to make sure that you get the maximum out of it, and then store your maximum, and then write a string that says the maximum score is X, and there were that many values, that many rows that got this value. So this is taking a little bit longer than I was expecting. So we'll get back to it in a little bit. If you have questions right now, put them in the comments. So this, or wherever the comments end up arriving, so this way I can answer them. Otherwise, if there's no question, I'm going to go straight to Azure. Whew, that was fun. All right. I don't see any questions just yet. I'll wait a second. I'll get my little Azure stuff ready. All right. Still no questions. Great. Let's move on. I'll get back to that. Maybe later. All right. Forgot that I have to do that. Whoops. All right. Our default thing is going to be PowerShell. I'm going to create storage. Cool. Is this done? I'll get back to it. I'm just going to set that aside to a different screen. That's 3 screens now. And I'm going to bring it back once I see that it's ready. Cool. Azure. Haha. That's awesome. Now, the good thing with Azure is this is PowerShell. This is full-blown PowerShell. So whatever we did here, or whatever we just did now, applies. You can run all the code that I've been running so far. You can run that into this PowerShell console. So congrats, Microsoft. This is awesome. This is PowerShell in a browser. Good job. I like it. So PowerShell in Azure is already logged in to Azure, right? So we can get AZ resource group, right? We can get resource groups. Now, if I go to terminal, where's my terminal? Oh. All right, now if I do get AZ resource group here, please tell me you're not logged in and I'm not gonna log in. All right, because I already logged in beforehand. So because I was logged in beforehand, this works. But in order to do that, to get that properly, what you would do is you would do connect dash AZ account, right? This will bring up a window here, and I have 2 accounts. This is visual account that only has access to this and will be deleted after this. So you connect, you authenticate, you will probably have to log in if you haven't logged in yet. Then you can close. And if we go back here, see it says it's authenticated. This is a subscription name. This is the tenant ID. And then we're good. We can work on both of those just the same. The only difference is if you have stuff in your Cloud Shell that you have access to, you can't access it locally because you would basically have to mount the drive the Cloud Shell is in. But here, I'm just going to work on the Cloud Shell because it's easier for everyone. It looks the same for everyone. So the way PowerShell works in Azure is, and for Azure itself, is everything is AZ. Everything is verb-AZ and then nouns. No, I did not enable 2FA on this one. I just created this account. I do have other accounts with 2FA. This is a very restricted account that barely has access to anything. But yes, if you do have an account with 2FA and even PIM, Privileged Identity Management, you will have to go through those processes, 2FA to authenticate and PIM to activate the role you need. So yeah, good question, Paul. Actually, can I show this so people? Good question. And you should enable 2FA, right? To enable 2FA. This is just a test account for this 1 hour, and it will be removed immediately after. So here you can do verb-az and then noun. So the basic ones that you want to know is you want to be able to get a subscription, you want to be able to get a resource group. Just because one thing you will see is PowerShell AZ module. If you look here in the documentation for AZ modules, it's come on, sample scripts, Windows Virtual Machine. Yeah, we'll get a random one. Oh, copy disk. How does this look? See, everything, subscription ID, resource group name, all this is always very important. So remember those two. Those are critical ones to know. Very simple, critical to know, because they always come up. Resource group name, very important. The other thing, and let's see if we have virtual machine. So I'm going to put that in the chat. This GitHub is very useful to have. This is a repository of like sample scripts, so you don't even need to come up with it yourself. Though you should practice. You should. Let's do a virtual machine. You'll see create VM IIS. Right. Let's look at that. So this is a bad example, but on a lot of examples, the thing I don't like about Azure is that there are a lot of components to a lot of systems, right? So you have to create a resource group, right? You have to create a disk. In this case, you don't have to create a disk. Can I do this? Yeah, okay, there we go. So you create a virtual network config, then you create a virtual network, then you create a public IP address, then you create a network security group role, then you create a network security group, then you create a network interface, then a VM config, then the OS, then an image, then an interface. Then you set the OS, then you set the image, then you set the interface, then you add a public key, and then you can create your virtual machine. It's great, right? It's very detailed, and you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of control. But there can be a lot of things to do in Azure to create things. So it's very important. It's very important to go and practice yourself and understand how things work. But the good thing is, like I said at the beginning with cmdlets, you have those verbs that at the very least, the naming convention, the verb-noun, makes it very easy to understand. I can read this code. I don't need to know how to use those cmdlets. I probably don't even need to know the cmdlets. We'll probably just pick a random service and we'll try to create it. I don't know. Let's see. New AZ Custo. Right. I want a Custo database. I want a Custo Explorer. Sorry. There you go. Very simple. You just need to know the verbs of what you want to do, and then you have that, and then let's say new AZ Custo cluster, right? Then up we do tab, dash, tab, and then we're like, here's everything you need to know. Here's everything you can pass. You don't have to do all of them. Here's all the options you can have. So that's practical. Let's go back quickly here. So it finally ran. And here you can see your maximum roll is 4,000 at 66, right? So just, it works. And then make up something. Cool. So let's do something. So, all right. Do people want to look at how to create resources and manage Azure with PowerShell, or how to use PowerShell in resources? So I have, in my subscription, I have created two things that could be used with PowerShell. The first one is a Azure Functions running PowerShell. So functions are basically a serverless version of running PowerShell, and you can trigger it in different ways to get through API, through events in Azure, like a file being created and things like that, or an object being created in the database. Or I have an automation account, which is used to manage Azure, to do Azure automation, like with triggers and things like that, as opposed to just writing a script. So you've got 10 seconds to tell me which one you want. Managing with a script from PowerShell, from the command lines, right? From here, using Azure Functions, or using automation. The default is going to be the CLI. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, no comments. It's going to be CLI. So actually, it's not going to be CLI. It's going to be script. We're going to get a script going. I started doing this. So I'll close this. Yep. Well, oh, I'm sorry, guys. We have one CLI, one Azure Functions. I guess I'll do CLI because I'm going through it. I'm sorry. Azure Function is next, though, and I'm gonna try to end this before 8:30 because my voice is getting tired. But so here, I've been trying to do this. I've been trying to be like, I give you a script to create the resources I've created in my account. So before I started this, I was like, can I create that script? So it's been a pain, and we'll work on it together because, as you can see, and like I said, there are multiple components that need to be created one at a time. Sometimes beforehand, you can't just be like, hey, I want this, and you'll create it. You have to create it, start it, and then you run it, and then it's like, hey, I have an error, you need this. Because I'm actually being lazy-ish and not looking at the documentation. So we can look at the documentation for this one. And we can see our parameter set. Oh my God. That's why I don't look at Azure parameter sets. Look at all these options. Everything is optional, but you don't know which one is optional until you actually go through it. and you get error messages. So let's go through it and get our error messages. So let's do this. So here's what I did. The idea is you're going to create an Azure function with your name in it. So this way it's unique, right? So if everybody who's on the stream, if we have 100 people on the stream, which I don't think we do, but if we have 100 people on the stream, you can all create your Azure function because they need to be globally unique names. So the first thing we do is we get the name, we get your name, right? And let me comment that. Did I change something? me commit that so you can follow along. So that code is now in the repository. So here, so the first thing is we get the name, then we get Azure context. So this tells you which subscription you're in, which accounts you have, and all that stuff. If this returns nothing, it means you're not logged in, right? So, and if you're not logged in, then you have to connect. Otherwise, you would have to connect every time you run the script, which is not practical. Now we're going to get our resource group name. Here, it's going to be the date, today's date. And we're going to see if this resource group exists. In theory, it will exist because I created it. But let's add a check, right? It's always good to comment your code so you know what you're doing. Create RG if it doesn't exist, right? So if not resource group, right? So if it doesn't return an item with that name, this is a pipe. It filters. We'll go to pipe next stream. I can't just cover all of PowerShell in one stream, otherwise it will be boring. Then we do new AZ resource group, right? And now it probably needs a name, which is RG name, right? And it probably needs a location. Just so you know, the location of a resource group in Azure is to store logs. It doesn't run anything, it just stores logs there. Useful for compliance like GDPR and things like that. Location is going to be our, and I'm just going to do East US, right? East US, and probably subscription, right? You want a subscription? No, it's going to do in the context. So this will create a resource group in our context, which is the subscription, right? Account subscription, that's the context. So if it doesn't exist, it will create the resource group. Right. We'll assign this to the variable because we need this later. Then we're going to create a storage account, right, with the name, which is going to be the name you've inputted here. Then it's going to be the resource group name. Then it's going to be func, like function, to know that this is a storage account for the functions. Then SA, because my naming convention is SA for storage account. And then it's going to be all to lowercase, and we're going to replace any, like the dashes that are not allowed for a resource group name with nothing. So this way we have a resource group that's acceptable for Azure. We're going to see this is a resource group name that is going to be in. This is the location it's going to be in. Important that all the resources that belong to one super resource, like in this case an Azure function, are in the same region. For most cases, usually it doesn't like being in different regions. Then the SKU name, which is standard locally redundant storage. And I think we have everything, right? And here, see, I have made a mistake. I have my storage account name here that's being generated, and it's generated here. And so that's why we're going to do a variable, right? SA name equals this. And now it's a little bit more readable. All right, let's run this. Let's give it a shot. We're probably going to get an error message. But what's your name? I already created something, so I'm going to say my name is Taylor. Why not? Who cares? All right. Oh, it's already taken. Did I create those resources, or did somebody just was like, I'm just going to create that to bother Carolyn? Haha, I created them. Hey, it worked. Who knew? I'm just going to delete those resources. Yes. Delete. Cool. Who knew that it would work? All right. So let's create our account, our functions, Azure functions. And now we can press play. Hopefully it's deleted. You deleted? You're deleted. Cool. All right. So now we can run our Azure function. And let's go. All right. Our name is going to be Taylor. So now it doesn't give you feedback. We probably should have enabled the dash verbose switch on parameter on our commandlets, so we get better feedback about what it's doing. But right now it's probably being stuck creating the storage account, which takes a few seconds. There you go. And now it's at functions, right? So it's using default settings, and the OS type PowerShell is Windows. There's no other options, and the PowerShell version is 7.0, and there's no other options either. So it's doing its thing, telling you it's doing the verbose. We can go in here, refresh. Come on, refresh. We may have deployments in here. Am I? Oh, there we go. Doesn't show up. Who knew? But yeah, if we keep hitting refresh, at some point we're going to see something. We're bound to see something, right? You're going to put it here. You're going to put it to the side. All right. Well, while we wait, does anybody on the stream have any questions? Anything I didn't cover? Anything I covered too lightly? Anything you'd like to talk about? We're 15 minutes away from when I would like to stop this stream. So if this is all working fine and nobody has questions, that's going to be the end of the stream. We're just going to wait for this to be done. So in the next stream, let's go back to this. Oh, no, there was a bad request. What's our bad request? You weirdo. Let's run it again. I don't know why you're saying it's a bad request. The code works. It already exists. Let's see. I don't know. So the next stream, what I'd like to talk about is things that are a little more advanced. So if we look here, I'd like to talk about pipes, advanced functions, which are functions that allow you to process things properly, where you can pipe to them and all that stuff. They're a little bit more performant. I would like to talk about start job, which is a way to do parallel computing, parallel processing in PowerShell. And see here, there you go. It actually ran and it created our function. Let's hit refresh. There you go, Taylor func. It's going to be a second before it shows the function. But yeah, so I'll talk about start job to do parallel computing, and workflows, which are a way to run things in parallel without actually starting a job. So it enables you to do for each parallel, where it will do like, I don't know, 20 items at the same time, as opposed to one at a time sequentially. And then we'll do probably one of those Azure topics, whatever people want. Maybe we'll have more time and we'll do all of the Azure topics. So let's go back here. Let's see how we're doing with our Azure. And ta-da! It's deployed. Our function app is deployed. Good job, everyone. All right, since there's no question, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I appreciate it. I hope I answered a lot of your questions for PowerShell. I hope that it made you want to learn more. If you didn't like the stream, if you have things that you want me to change, put in the comments, so this way I know what to do for next time. Feel free to contribute to the GitHub repository. I have no objections to that. The more the merrier. It takes a lot of work to do this, so I appreciate the help for anyone who wants to do this. And yeah, also let me know what you want to talk about next week when I do the next stream. And I'll see you in the next stream. Bye.